A type of structure. We have business on the left side, IT on the right side, and then within IT, things are within the departments, and we organize around projects. People are assigned to projects. So that was A. B is what I was talking about here, where A gets restructured, business IT gets restructured into cross-functional, some type of Scrum Kanban team, but the business and IT are still not aligned, and there's still divide and in many different aspects. And then C operating type of system is where we organize around dedicated value streams. And what I was saying here is like, I'm just visualizing down here, streamline teams from team topologies. I'm not, including other types of teams. But the issue that I've seen and what I would like to discuss in today's panel is why it's been so difficult to go from B to C, or it's not as bad as A to B, but people think they achieved agility or the goal is to be in B and not necessarily look at C. And C is where the transformation is driven by business. Here, like IT was, driving that. So my first question for you guys is, what are the steps and considerations for organizations transitioning from a type of structure where you have within IT silos like development department, QA department, BA department, or where most organizations are today? They've gone through some type of IT agile transformation, but there's still a lot of misalignment between business and IT. They're not organized around value streams or dedicated value streams. They don't even understand if they're part of a value stream. And why is it so hard to get to C? So that's my first question as far as what are some of the first steps that organizations and people should consider, assuming that you understand or this makes sense, or just think of it as a traditional hierarchical, moving from traditional hierarchical organizations to more of value stream networks. So that's question.
I'll jump in. I think the first thing is some visibility to create awareness, because when you look at where you're starting in many cases, it's there for a reason. I mean, not necessarily a good reason, but some of the reasons are history, and some of the reasons are this is what people are used to. This is also people are kind of creating their own little fiefdoms, you could say. And I'll share a quick picture here. What you have in the normal way things are working is just zipping back through a presentation, is that create awareness that the way you're working is a lot of work and then a handoff, a lot of work and then a handoff, a lot of work and then a handoff, and it causes problems. So the first thing is people have to understand that the way they're organized is not a good way to be organized, because they have to have motivation to give it up. They have to have motivation to get out of the discomfort of it. And that's where I start. And also then I also bring up this point that the organization and the flow of work, even if you don't know what a value stream is at this moment, you can see this. They can see this. So if you don't give people motivation and a why, they're not going to change the how. So that'd be my first step.
And can I jump in?
Oh, please. I
would love to share a slide if I could.
Yeah,
please.
let me stop mine.
Okay.
I just wanted to get those 2 points with, and they already know this. That's the beauty of it. They already know what I just showed you. That's not new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I want to emphasize what Al just said there about, we're organized still in 2024 in these functional silos, and it's not just the technology teams, it's all across the organization, and yet the customer's experiencing the delivery of value horizontally, and it just doesn't make sense that we're still structured this way. And so what I have found, back in the beginning in 1999, when the book Learning to See came out, and it introduced value stream mapping for the first time in a public way, at least.
Karen, sorry to interrupt you, but you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not yet. Yeah, I'm going to in just 1 second. Thank you. And so what happened when 1999 was the value streams were manufacturing only back then, and the top part and the new person of the party of mapping was information flow. But back then in 1999, information technology wasn't where it is today. And it was a lot about the planning and scheduling of manufacturing and that kind of information flow. So when we got into the picture in the early 2000s and started spreading value stream thinking into other industries that were highly tech oriented, that's where the beauty of value stream mapping, I think, started really emerging. Now I am going to share. And I'm going to show you, this was one of the most interesting client experiences I've ever had, was when we went to a very large company, Fortune 100. And this is the current state map. I've removed the timeline that's on the bottom of it, but this was a technology, or not a technology company. This was a company that was having a very difficult time doing any of their work. And the CTO, according to the people on the team, the CTO, CIO, was constantly considering budget to connect systems, and then it always got cut. And once we got the information flow, which in this case was really all IT related, it was stunning visually. And when the CTO walked into the briefing on the end of the first day and saw this, of course, it was paper and Post-its on a wall. It wasn't quite this pretty. I mean, he was just stunned at the lack of connectivity between these different, systems that were being used to push work along the system of this very large company. And they got budget within like 3 weeks or something like that. It was very, very fast. That, just the visualization of how information goes in and out of systems is so critical. And the psychological ramifications of this are even more powerful, because again, it used to be business and technology. And now everyone is starting to be able to see that interconnectivity in an incredibly powerful and fact-based way that is helping. So that's, I think, the map itself helps a ton in this effort.
Rob, what are you?
Yes, I also have a screen to share. So one of the things I see that organizations are struggling with is their transition. So the first transition I see, in addition to what you see, Miljan, is the transition to more product-driven operating models. So, and that's already not new, right? Just let me know if you can see my screen, by the way. Do you see my slide with the product-driven operating?
There it goes.
We do.
Yeah. So what I see most organizations are currently organized is in business units, if you will, and business units have IT in it. So you have like this is an example more from a telco, but I was working for Shell. There was like an upstream and downstream business unit. They had their own IT, their own CIO. So that's the first thing that happens, that the IT is organized around a business unit, basically a product line. And in some organizations, they even say, oh, these product lines are my value streams. And so bear with me, that is the kind of challenge I see by most organizations. So they have different business units. And I just took a picture, Karen, of your slide. And every business unit has their own complex value streams as well. If they would draw the picture here for this products that they deliver to the customer, have the same complexity, and the product lines that sit here have the same complexity. But nowadays, the generic functions become more bigger, and because the customer is consuming different products. And in this generic IT or business functions, you have like into web portals, integration platform, data analytic platform, like platform teams that are consuming, basically creating generic functions for all these business units. So the whole value stream becomes more complex, if you will. But the key topic I would like to discuss with you, and I'm curious how you see that, if I talk with telcos, for example, they struggle with the concept of a value stream itself. For example, they have different product lines. And just to give an example, they have like mobile telephony product line, TV, internet, fixed line, and they're product owners, where it's not just a product, it's a whole. And they say, oh, maybe that's my revenue streams, right? And I organize my people around these product lines, but a customer typically consumes multiple products and services. So that's why they think about, I have a different generic value streams across. Like, for example, somebody is onboarding, like one value stream would be order to fulfill. Somebody wants to subscribe to mobile telephony. So it's a whole onboarding to that mobile telephony work stream. But that typically the same onboarding could be done for TV and internet and fixed line, right? So you see that the activities people do to onboard a new customer or fix an issue or do usage to pay are typically end-to-end flows that are typically similar in a flow across the different product lines. And that's why you kind of the challenge, like who owns a value stream? And I'm curious, Karen, you see that because is difficult. These are more like end-to-end activities, like how do I create an idea and bring it into the market. The actual product teams have different, here are the people actually working on this product team and this product and this product. But often the idea is, of course, that they maybe share the same kind of processes and tools to actually deliver a new product, make it available for the customer to consume and monitor that. So that's I see as a key challenge. Organize around products, more product driven, and then at the same time look at your end-to-end activities processes that enables these flows. Curious how you see that, for example.
Yeah.
Or do you recognize this?
I want to riff on both what you just said and what Karen said a minute ago. Do you see that both the way we're organized and what you have here where things are separate, can you imagine how much coordination is necessary? Do you know how many meetings you're in that are just there for coordination? Okay.
Yes.
Well, what if, now consider this, everything that was just said is about alignment. It's about creating alignment. And a lot of it is, as was said, creates visibility and reduces a lot of work. But forget that. That's really useful stuff. But just forget that for a second. And just consider the alignment that's now created. Imagine how much less work is needed for coordination, how many fewer meetings are needed. And this is something that I don't think is emphasized enough. We coordinate. Most of the large scale approaches are about coordination, and they don't talk about alignment, and value streams are about alignment. I mean, that's one aspect of it.
Yeah, and I'll weigh in that I don't know that it matters 100% on whether it's product driven or organized around customer groupings, as long as that's holistically organized and not.
Oh, that is so beautiful.
You know, I don't think it matters.
Steve Perra, I'm co-writing a book with him and Gary. We've been having some interesting conversations about value streams, and I'll admit I've been dead to something that Steve really had to hit us on for a while. See, these are all, we talked about all these different kinds of value streams, but partly they should all be even whether you're building it or using it or supporting it, they all need to be cohesive. They need to bring everything together. And I know I'm not telling you to anything new, but that's something else. They're not like these separate things that work together. They're just different reflections of the same thing. And that just underscores what you just said, Karen.
Yeah.
So maybe to go back, like I'm hearing a couple of things. The question was around what are the first steps and considerations from organizations moving from traditional siloed functional to more of what you're describing here. And I think a lot of us here understand that. But there's also confusion. You also brought up confusion of what value stream is. Do we call them, development? So there seems to be a couple of different things that I've observed. First of all, as far as first steps, I think that a lot of times becomes, well, just do value stream mapping or just sell it to the leadership as far as what the benefits are. Like Al is saying, like, just look how much nonsense and how much dependencies and, so there is that aspect of, selling it in a way that this is going to be better. There's also aspect of unclarity around what value streams are. In context of the understanding, what are some of the things what I've seen, and I don't know if this is what you've seen as well, but in a lot of organizations, these changes are driven by people that don't have the authority to make the necessary changes. So think about like, agile coach consultants, and they're being, championing these changes towards what you're describing here in context of those ABC towards C, towards those end-to-end value stream networks, whatever you want to call them. I'm curious from your perspective, are you seeing that? And what are some of the challenges of getting the leadership to buy and see some of this? Because ultimately, it doesn't happen unless, at least in my experience, unless you get the board and top leaders in the organization to see this.
Oh, you're right. Karen, basically what you showed is a good example. where you have the value stream mapping done, and you show the stakeholders what a mess it is, or at least complex flows. And so that is probably an eye opener. So that's one way, right? People realize and get a kind of a mirror, and we map your current flows, and we see there's a lot of fragmented ways of working, teams, different vendors in the ecosystem. So they realize, oh, because people even didn't have this picture that Karen just showed, right? How do we create value to our customers? What are the steps? What are the controls in place? And nowadays, risk and compliance becomes more important, data privacy, and they have no clue how that interacts with the end-to-end value streams. So suddenly they miss, they never engineer these value streams, right? Because otherwise we would have a picture how it runs today and where things go wrong. So I think the first step typically is to show a kind of current state and look at all the gaps and challenges, also relate to risk and compliance. So I noticed that a lot of companies suddenly realize, oh, I don't even have control about, all those touch points in my process. So hopefully the senior executives realize that, oh, we're not in control, we cannot, and maybe it's a bad example, but compliance can be a key driver for some organizations. And suddenly they're saying, oh, we need to have a better understanding how we work in our organization, who is even accountable to make sure that all these activities are done the right way. And what happens in many organizations, they have to assign product owners to different sub parts of the value stream, right? Because the value stream, maybe multiple product teams work together. But if you ask the product owner, what are you accountable for in your product? Are you responsible for the cost, the compliance, the risk, technology refresh? And they look at you, well, I'm more focusing on development than the ops side, so I'm not even feeling accountable. I don't even have the influence to do so. So that will be a good, nice start, right? To show people, okay, this is our current state. It's a bit of a mess, if you will. So maybe we should then formalize and assign value stream owners that gonna, or value stream analysts, whatever you call them, to really start working on this as an integrated picture.
Al, do you want to go, or do you want?
Yeah, I did have something quick on this. So I think the biggest impediment to getting management and executives involved is the assumption that they're bad and evil and don't want to. Yeah, and I'm over this. I've been over this for 20 years. Chicken and pigs, it goes back, and they took that out, thank God. But it's still present. Oh man, the permafrost, the this, the that. I've seen management do bad. I've seen teams do bad. It's called being a human being. You got to show them the why. And what Rob was talking about and what Karen's talking about and what I've been talking about is if you show them the why, you have a chance. And it's on them if they don't do something. So when you don't have control, show them the why. This is the impact. This is something I teach people to do, is if you can't control it, at least document the cost of not being able to make the change. Now, if you don't do that, that's on you. It's not on management. Now, if you show that to management and they don't do anything, maybe it is on them. But my experience is most of the time, management wants to get the job done right if you can show them a big enough why.
It is. I'll just jump in here because I had a conversation this morning about this, but like where leadership actually didn't buy into this because short-term goals around profits were not aligning with essentially doing value stream mapping or moving towards this because they're incentivized for 2024. They're not incentivized beyond that. So in that instance, leadership was shutting down and actually in a way removing this person because this didn't align with their profits and the alignment for the 2024 from a KPIs that they were incentivized to do.
Yeah, it does happen, but it shouldn't be considered always and universal. There's no doubt.
So I'll add one more thing to it, is that I find that people mid-level and below could all use a healthy dose of how to advocate for your ideas. And I mean, we're going to develop a course on it this year because I see such a gap in people with really good ideas not able to articulate them clearly enough and speak leadership speak in order to be heard. And so I think there's a big gap there to be filled. And then the other reality that I hate even saying this, verbalizing it, but it is such a reality and it makes me sad that oftentimes leaders just won't listen to internal people. And oftentimes they pay a lot of money to bring consultants in, us included. We say the same darn thing that people have been saying internally, and all of a sudden it's genius. And it kills me. But it is a reality that I see an awful lot And, sometimes selling your leadership on an idea does take someone from the outside
Yeah.
with credibility to do it.
I
Yeah,
like what
I'm
you said, Karen.
laughing. I'm sorry, this will be
Yeah,
quick.
yeah, sure.
I'm laughing because one of the things I always do when I go on site is I find somebody inside and I talk to them and I say, now, what have you been telling these people? Because they need to know, but they'll hear me. They won't hear you. It's not fair.
It's
But
not fair.
you want to, but it's not fair, but it is, if that's the way it is, take advantage of that as an external consultant that happens. Sorry,
Yeah.
Rob, go ahead.
No, sure. That's a good. Now, one of the things I noticed, Karen, on this is that I work with companies, so you go there for the first time and you have no clue how their end-to-end processes work, right? So you're starting to talk with all the people that could be on the development side, ops side, risk management, compliance, finance, and suddenly you know more than any person in the whole organization because they have never done that. And then suddenly you can pinpoint, here is your problem. And the funny thing is that so how to fix it? Because you said, Karen, they don't listen to stakeholders internally. They sometimes do, but if you ask a single team what the problem is, they show their problem, right? It's typically a problem in their part of the chain. But suddenly, if you investigate everything, how's everything connecting together, you see the gaps, right? So what I was thinking, you highlighted that maybe management should reserve people that actually are not involved in day-to-day product activity, but they are looking at the end-to-end value stream, like investigating, like almost like a value stream analyst, a person that typically they sit in architecture today, right? But they don't do that job today. Like there's somebody that really oversees the end-to-end flows, and nobody was assigned to that. So if I go to a new organization, I would talk to everyone and I see the bigger picture, which other people didn't see anymore that were sitting in the organization. So maybe we need to think about who in the organization should have that role to continuously look at the end-to-end picture and see where improvements are.
Well, shouldn't that be like somebody like COO or somebody like closer to?
Yeah.
Right.
Now, in often what you have is like, if you think about, like we talk about continuous improvement as well, right? We want to continuously improve our value stream and outcome for the business and for the customer and the value and experience. But continuous improvement, you assume that you can continuously improve something. And typically what we miss is, like in the value stream analysis, Karen, that you do, for example, you probably find out 30 points that can be improved or even more, right? But where do you start? So often we don't have a foundation to continuously improve because we didn't have a value stream architecture in place. We didn't ever engineer a value stream. So maybe we should re-engineering the value stream, but we don't do that. We're just starting to fix here and there. And then hopefully the value stream suddenly flows. And then we fix one bottleneck here, we find that something else is also broken. And we miss a good foundation to improve. At least that I see a lot. And
I mean, one of the things I say a lot, and I want to really emphasize it with this great group here, it's not about the map. It's never been about the map. It's never going to be about the map. The map is the means to have the important conversations and decisions made that need to be made to realize the future state design that's part of the mapping process. So the transformation plan, which is, you have to have a transformation plan. You have to prioritize the improvements that need to be made. You have to have some organization around all this stuff because it's usually huge. If you do a aggressive future state design, there's a lot to be done, and it takes 9 to 12 months sometimes to make the transformations that need to happen. And so it has to be driven by a plan. It needs to be a well-organized plan. There needs to be a plan manager. I mean, it needs to be a very disciplined approach to the actual improvement, or it won't happen.
Yeah. I want to go back to Andrew Harner's statement, which kind of goes back to my initial question, where I know I've worked with Andrew at WEX, I've worked with several others, and what happens and what he stated here is a lot of times the shift is also difficult because it's ability to visualize and quantify the impact of that A and B or impact of the matrix type of structure. However, I've also seen with WEX, I've seen it with other companies where the silos and fiefdoms, I think that Al talked about, don't allow, even if you want to visualize and just expose the current state, sometimes people feel threatened.
Yeah.
And that can be a barrier. So my question to you is, could you maybe elaborate on what would you do? Because I'm talking to a lot of people, I'm experiencing this, where they're getting that pushback, they're not getting their leadership to be more involved. Their leader, they know more than their leadership about value stream management. What would you say to people like that are looking for insights on those type of situations?
You know, one of the things I say a lot when I can get an audience, well, so first of all, we won't work with an organization if we can't get an audience with VPs and above. So, you know, if you're internal, just try that on for size, because it is a good goal that you need to get to a high enough level that they've got the authority and vision to do the work. That's first thing. Second thing is, when I get the audience, one of the first things I do is I look every single leader in the eye as I'm saying this. I propose that not any one of you can articulate with a decent degree of complete and accurate facts about how you actually deliver value to your customers, because you are organized in silos. And you probably all know your team's work, or hopefully know your team's work pretty well. You might know one step upstream, one step downstream, but you don't know the whole delivery of value. And you don't need to know it at a tactical level. You don't need to be in the weeds. No leader should know all that stuff. That's what the people, that are doing the work are there to know. But when no one senior leader can articulate with any degree of accuracy how value is delivered to a customer and how work flows across the system, how do they make decent decisions? How do they budget? How do they prioritize? And that usually is kind of like, right between the eyes. And so that often turns the tone of a meeting with senior leaders pretty quickly into a positive, we're listening, tell us more.
Any ideas on how, I mean, like you just said, pretty much if you don't get your leaders, you don't talk to you don't get involved. But there are a lot of people that are stuck. They're being asked to drive this without a lot of authority. They're being put in difficult situations because they can't. Is there anything besides just keeping positive and trying to influence? Is there anything else that you would recommend or maybe have seen works?
Yeah, I see it all the time, and it is very unfortunate, and it's very unfair. I think, first of all, I think, having that person bounce off a perspective conversation with someone outside of the situation to make sure that their storytelling is very good, to make sure that they're crafting the why very quickly and succinctly. I mean, leadership, they don't have time to listen for, blah, 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 blah. You have to go bam, 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 in an incredibly respectful way. And so just practicing that messaging. And a lot of people I talk with are afraid to even ask for a meeting. And I'm like, what are you afraid of? Do you think they're going to say no? Do you have evidence that they're going to say no? Have you asked for a meeting and they said no? And so it's like just getting brave and knowing that you probably do know more than they know about what needs to be done. And so finding the right means to communicate that in a respectful way, and it starts by asking for a meeting.
Yeah.
Mm.
What I see as a
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay, thanks. Well, one thing is to make them aware, and you don't even really need to have a map to do this, but the idea that, see, people are busy, but the work isn't busy. The work is waiting most of the time. And so you don't even really need a map, because you can talk to people about how, oh, we almost got this done, but we hadn't told ops and they didn't get their thing done, or marketing wasn't involved. And then it brings forward a question. And you have to find this before the conversation with the executives. You find the project that took like 6 months, an important project that took 6 months because people were working on 3 or 4 other things at the same time. And you ask them, if you could have gotten that project done in a month instead of 6 months, would you have paid more for that? Would you pay 20% more? And they'll always say yes. It's got to be an important project. But now here's what's interesting. See, they think it's going to cost more. It actually costs less. Yeah. And the reason it costs less is when you work like this, you're also creating extra work. My guess, and this is a guess, I've got anecdotal evidence, but I believe about 70 to 90% of the work companies work on, they created by delays in their value stream. Yeah. And that you don't go faster at the steps, you cut the delays out, you cut the gaps out in between the steps. That's why I joked in the chat, I said, oh, the British tube system has it right, mind the gap. Mm-hmm. And that focus is something that drives everything. And I think executives can get a lot faster than a lot of other things. So I just wanted to inject that.
That's
if you leave
good.
this picture out, because that's actually
sure.
very nice. So what I see that many organizational challenges with that they don't have a clear insight of this. So let's say the executives, they don't see where the issues are, that there are waiting time or bottlenecks. So they only see the outcome. The business, the customers may not be satisfied, or there's some issues, and of course incidents they see. But often they have no clue where they need to change or fix something, right? And they executives will say, but I have people accountable for that. We have people maybe for the marketing, for the product management. So they believe that they have already assigned these jobs to the different people. And even the people below are saying, oh yeah, next month I'm going to improve my development here. I'm going to, so we also need to focus on the bottom layer. The bottom layer is typically telling the management as well, oh, we're going to do these marketing initiatives. So it gives the impression to the top layer that everyone is doing the right thing and we all continuously improve, but they don't work together. But typically what I see as a challenge that nobody sees. So we keep this kind of problem in place ourselves because all these teams below, they have a quarterly business review event. They explain what they're doing. They even tell how good they're doing because they want to show how good they are. So everybody plays their role and say, oh, we've done great. We have now new product, new features delivered. And at the same, we still have these issues and they started to complain, of course, but the end-to-end business outcome is customers are complaining, maybe we have issues or delays. But the management doesn't see where they need to be improved because they only see the outcome metrics. And how do you, so what we need is, I think, value stream management. That's where it's so great that, and I'm not saying it's easy to sell, but if this would be a kind of like, process mining, right? Nowadays we have process mining components. Imagine everything that people do is automatically shown in this dashboard you show here. We just have visibility for all the work in the business, and we see how long it waits. So we just see the real work, how real items work flow through the organization. Imagine you have that insight and what decisions you can make. But that needs to be part of the design of every process, because we could almost like monitor this in real time and then take improvement actions. Instead of, once in 3 months, do a session and see, okay, what do you see as an improvement, right?
Yeah, I want to show how this slide also underscores, Rob, what you were saying. There are two things here. One is the only people who can fix this are mid-managers who are changing the structure. You can't change it individually. But this is one of the things that I have been screaming about missing in the Agile.
Just to clarify, you're saying mid-managers can change because they're changing the structure?
They're the ones who know what's going on. It's not the top guys. They need to be supported by the top guys.
Yeah.
But it's typically the mid-layer and maybe the VPs above them.
I agree, because the people on the work floor, on the ops, they typically
They're
only see the things they can improve their own parts, but it doesn't improve the chain as a whole.
That's right. So the top level has to create that it's okay for these people to create the environment within which to work. Now, is it the middle level, the top level? Somebody above here, let me say it that way. But this is something that has been missing in the Agile space from day one. Is systems thinking. There is almost no systems thinking in the Agile space.
And I like what you say, because that's the problem. There's no system thinking, but also to improve this, we often start a project and we don't make it part of the system. Like the executives say, yeah, but I have a project run on that. I have a project to improve the whole, but that's the project. It's not the same as embed this thinking of value streams in the DNA of all people and continuously monitor, improve it. We need to.
If you don't do an end-to-end initiation to start something, to prove it, all you're doing with a project is showing Agile will work at the team, which proves absolutely nothing.
Well, and all you're doing is creating a great risk of sub-optimization, which, this is another thing. The leaders need to understand this term sub-optimization, that if the organization is doing all this great improvement work and they're getting all these great results, chances are very high that the value is still not being delivered any more quickly because it hasn't been looked at from a systems perspective. And so, like back in the day when I was a long time ago as a med tech, I was clinical lab scientist before I got into this whole operations stuff. And, we worked so hard at getting lab results out fast. And we did a really good job. Did the patients get through the emergency department any faster? Nope. Because it was just one part of a value stream that got really, really well oiled, but nothing else was well oiled. So that's another conversation we have with leadership a lot that makes them go, oh. So that's something that can sometimes help sell the idea of a holistic way of looking at workflow.
So with that said, I think that also includes when we look at and think about it in systemically, that includes finance. I think finance is one of the bigger issues too, how we fund and look at things. What I'm also hearing is that architecture, be it like if it's changed by middle managers like Al said, or upper management, but generally understanding systemic way of looking at the architecture. Somebody mentioned earlier as maybe Helen of having emergent and flexible architecture. So with that said, since humans are so bad at systems thinking and dealing with this stuff, how do you think AI will be integrated from value stream management to helping us actually architect better organizations? And in general, what do you think, in what ways are you seeing, and do you think AI will help with everything that we've been talking about so far?
Oh. I'm not an expert in AI.
What are you seeing, but what are your wishes? What
Well,
about?
here's my thinking about it though, is that what's missing is not just systems thinking. What's missing is a general understanding of what's happening. Ellie Goldratt talks about this in The Choice. So I do like theory constraints, but I don't consider myself an expert there. But in The Choice, he talks about at the basis of things, there are a few things that interact and cause the system. See, if you take Akoff's thing, that it's the relationships between things. What are those relationships? And a lot of the community takes pride in being based on empiricism. And I take pride on breathing. Of course you base it on empiricism. Everybody uses empiricism. But what's missing is a theory. Everybody talks about it as being too complex. It is a complex system, but if you can start seeing the relationships and you get quick feedback by cutting out the delays, you can get a lot more control. And I suspect that what AI might do is, because people don't have the theory and AI may not have the theory, but it'll be able to give a lot of examples faster and might overcome the problem of people not working with proper theory. That's my hope. I mean, it'll do a lot of other stuff, but that's my view on what would be really useful.
So here's something to think about AI. And I mean, we're little toddlers, we're babies with AI, right? We have a long way to go. And so it's going to get better and better and better as time goes on. But one of the things, we have to think about where AI comes from. It comes from known information that's out there. And one of the things about value stream work is that most organizations that are of any notable size are not publicly revealing what they're doing with value streams. They are not sharing their maps. They are not sharing metrics. They are not sharing what their improvements are. And so, it's very, in some cases, it's very close to the vest from a competitive intel perspective. And, our NDAs in working with clients are crazy. And so, we have to be careful that we don't grab information that's out there when it's a very small pool of information. It can be highly skewed. So it's going to take a long time for AI to get smart enough to be able to actually make the kinds of suggestions that could be helpful for getting better flow through value streams. And the other thing I'll say is that I get asked all the time to look at new applications that people are developing that involve AI in making a better future state. And they are so superficial and so missing in any nuance and complexity that's necessary to make good future state ideas that it's right now what I've seen is laughable. And I just want to put that out there. Be very careful about what anyone's trying to sell you as something to help accelerate and get better ideas about what needs to, what does, if not this, then what does need to be done. I think human brains are still the most important thing to have involved right now.
Yeah, my thing I agree with you, Karen and Al, but my take on this is that if you think about value streams of the future, they're becoming more data driven, right? There's a lot of data across the IT organization, the business and companies and vendors working together. So there's a lot of, let's say, complex relationship, and there's a lot of data flow. So I think we need to think about a data driven way of thinking about these value streams. So we have traceability, transparency, we can follow the path of the work to the value to the customer. So I think that's about data driven. So there's a lot of, let's say, points and control points you can build in your process to collect the data. It could be like lead time, issues, incidents, a lot of, like, basically monitor your value streams. So there's a lot of touch points you can do. in your supply chain system, in your DevSecOps tool chain. So you collect a lot of data, and that data you want to visualize and transform into meaningful decisions. So there, I think, not just AI, but I see AI as an extension to data analytics as well. So it processes my data, it can look at trends, it can look at bottlenecks, it can do maybe failure prediction. So I think AI will definitely help me to diagnose issues with also telemetry metrics for my customers, sentiment analysis. So I think it would help, but it requires, of course, more sophisticated thinking of your value stream. But if you think about how much data sources I have across my value stream, how nice would it be if I collect the data, collect that, correlate that together, and AI can maybe help me to visualize, correlate the data, do some prediction, trending analytics, and maybe some basic recommendations to start off with, right? And so I see definitely data analytics, AI helping me to improve if I starting to more think about the data-driven value streams. Yeah.
Or even just improving, like I'm just thinking like that most organizations don't even fully understand in current state and current
Right.
structure.
Yes.
You know, so like not forget about designing the future state. It's just how do we visualize and better understand the mess that
The
we
current. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why maybe it's, oh, sorry, Karen.
no, go ahead.
No, about data discovery. So I'm talking about if I can discover my processes through the systems that people are using, I can do like, it's not the same as process mining, but a kind of thing. So I can collect and discover my current way of working, look at the bottleneck. So I think indeed, as you mentioned it, we could use the data collection from the current state, build a picture of the actual bottlenecks. So, and then analytics can help me to say, oh, here you see some trends, gaps, issues.
And we
I think
talked about like hypothesis. Helen talked about hypothesis at the beginning. I think that this is another thing that I'm excited about. Like you can use, obviously AI is not where it's probably gonna be and where it's gonna be, 5 years, 10 years from now. But like to every day, constantly, the more like create hypothesis and say like, hey, these are our business objectives. This is how our current state. Give us some ideas as far as like how we could optimize, and then you run hypotheses across those ideas. And essentially, it's something that helps you. We still need our brains, and I agree with Karen. So we have about 4 minutes, and I saw Tim had his hand up. So let's see if we can conclude this and maybe answer Tim's question next 5 minutes.
Well, mine is a pretty simple and maybe obvious observation that one of the ways you can deal with these issues with AI is if you do, as Rob is suggesting, focus on internal information inside your organization, then you can avoid a lot of the issues that come in with AI getting crazy when you get outside of that. And I think that that's a useful approach.
Yeah, and that's nice that you say that, Tim, because nowadays also Gen AI and AI is much broader than you can use that nowadays to your own data as well, right? It doesn't have to be only on public data, so you can train your own data. And maybe another area where you can use AI is to help employees in the work streams themselves to do some like productivity tools, like you support them in the local decision making by giving them the right data and support. So there's many ways we can AI or potentially automation in general can help.
And I guess the last thing I'd like to say is that, in my view, value streams have always been data driven. Value stream mapping has always been data driven. And you need a whole lot of data to really understand the value stream. I think that was one shortcoming early on that, Learning to See had very kind of basic metrics that were involved. And over time, we've discovered that they didn't give the fullest complete picture of the current state. And one last thing I want to say about current state, I never used to do just current state mapping for clients because I thought, why do that when you know what a morass you've got? Why not move forward and make improvement? And I was always tickled by improvement, but I'm finding it shockingly helpful to start at just the current state and let them digest that.
Indeed.
And so I've changed my paradigm.
And it's good data. It's not just any data, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of times people are gathering things from other Excel sheets and using it to say like this is what's going on as part of this value stream, and it's not a whole reflected.
And the nice thing that you mentioned, Karen, is you do even doing that current state analysis, you bring people together, people from all the different places, even risk, compliance, finance, the supporting functions, every marketing. That's so nice, because then suddenly people realize, oh yeah, I'm part of an ecosystem or brought up, and they suddenly realize, well, how are they playing a role in the end-to-end value chain, which they may not have seen before, their impact. So that's nice. You can bring them together. And that's nice. Once you bring them together, maybe they can come together every quarter to do review improvements and check where they can enhance their value streams.
Al, would you like to say anything in closing?
No, in closing?
Well, we got
Um,
a couple more minutes, so
Well, I'm happy with everything that's said. I love if people contact me with questions. That's really all I'll say. I just
Yeah.
love this panel. This is not the first time I've been in with Karen. It's always great. And I really enjoyed with Rob. And what I want to point out, you can see how the three of us are different in how we do this. And that's important because it's the thought process underneath it all. It's not the particular exact way of doing things. And that's why I love being on panels like this. I learned a lot, actually. I was taking notes at times.
I learned from you too, Al, and Rob, you as well. Thank you.
you
Thank
have
you.
a
It was
lot
a
of
pleasure. It was really learned for myself as well. Yeah.
you guys also have a lot of content. For instance, Al, I didn't know about all the recordings that you have. I know Karen.
Oh, I've got hours and hours.
Yeah.
Go to successengineering.org, take resources, YouTubes. There's hours on this stuff
Put it-
all out
Put
there.
it in, if you don't mind, again, put it in.
No,
the
I love it. I love it.
there.
I'll put it in the chat. Yeah, it's real easy to get to.
I thought I'd keep up to speed, and I saw that it's been a year, and I'm like, I don't know how I missed that. So
Yeah, those slides are all from presentations. There's a playlist on this site that you can get to.
so put your info or the links to those. I'll grab them also at the end and share them as well. For those of you listening, connect. If you haven't already connected with Al, Karen, Rob, and others, connect with each other too. I mean, I'll see if there's, as I said, like 620 or so, 30, I don't know, people registered. Usually a third, as I said, showed up. But it's like-minded people. So I think it's really helpful to share if you're learning from others and have resources to share with each other. So we're gonna
And
take a, yep, sorry, go
Thank
ahead.
you for putting this together. This is just
Yes, thank
awesome.
you. Great job.
Really great. These conferences that you do, was it annually, right?
Well,
They're
I have
fantastic.
to figure out, like, essentially, like, I couldn't go to conference, so I would put conference that I was interested in and would
I just
started
put a
like
link
Good.
as well. I created some songs about flow in your organization, so I just put my link. So it's about songs that like make IT flow and all the things like
That's
like
good.
songs for flow. Let's say make your organization flow. But I did my own
Okay.
singing there.
I'll try to make this an annual thing. This is the second annual, but I have other conferences and other topics that I'm passionate about that I put together. So